Savannah Roders, a woman of 42 years, possessed eyes the shade of rich earth, eyes that had witnessed much sorrow and learned to veil it with a practiced grace. Her physique, though generous, defied the severe, narrow ideals embraced by the East Coast's privileged circles, circles her ancestral name had unceremoniously placed her within. As a black woman from a lineage of old wealth, her presence was undeniably striking, not merely due to her affluence, but because of an understated elegance and the peculiar way she observed others, as if each person held an unwritten saga, yearning to be heard. Yet behind her back, the very individuals who applauded her philanthropic endeavors whispered a cruel moniker. The fat heiress, her husband, Marcus Sterling, was one such detractor. On this particular morning, the opulent mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, was perfumed with the sweet fragrance of jasmine and the robust aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It was, in fact, Marcus's birthday. A private chef had meticulously prepared a sumptuous brunch, and Savannah had personally arranged for vibrant, fresh blossoms to grace the main salon. She had painstakingly selected an exquisite Rolex watch, an item she knew he coveted, not for its function in marking time, but for the prestige its designer label would confer, a gleaming symbol destined for his wrist in staged campaign photographs. Marcus, 7 years her junior, was a burgeoning politician, a man whose public persona exuded charisma, yet whose private demeanor was chillingly distant. His gaze held the predatory intensity of a hunter, perpetually assessing his next strategic maneuver. Their union had endured a decade, a period devoid of children, devoid of public scandal, and most notably, devoid of genuine affection. Savannah often pondered if their love had ever been authentic, or if it was merely a figment of her own hopeful imagination, akin to envisioning a coastal dwelling that remained forever unrealized. At precisely 10:16 in the morning, she descended the grand staircase, an envelope held delicately in her hand. It contained a certificate for a $100,000 donation made in Marcus's name to a national foundation dedicated to children's welfare. She harbored the innocent belief that this gesture would elicit a smile from him. He relished the appearance of generosity, and even more, he reveled in the enhancement of his public image across social media platforms. The dining room stood empty, yet she detected voices emanating from the adjacent drawing room. A moment of ingrained hesitation compelled her to pause, rendering her motionless behind the partially opened door. And then she heard it. "That cow disgusts me, Mother," Marcus's voice, laced with laughter, declared. "Her fortune is all I care about. Did you truly believe I enjoyed being intimate with her?" Savannah's breath hitched. Evelyn Sterling, her mother-in-law, exhibited no surprise at the cruel pronouncement. Her voice responded with an air of confirming the obvious. "At least maintain the pretense, Marcus. Do so until you inherit everything she possesses. Once that occurs, you know precisely what must be done. That woman's presence in your life is drawing to a close. Do you wish to remain tethered to a body that resembles an overinflated bag, a piñata brimming with regret?" A wave of shared amusement rippled through them, the effortless laughter of individuals utterly unburdened by shame for their profound cruelty. Savannah swallowed with great difficulty. The envelope slipped from her grasp, its descent entirely silent. Though her outward expression remained unchanged, her legs betrayed her with a subtle tremor, as if the very fabric of reality had suddenly accelerated. She maintained her composure. Slowly she retreated, ascending the stairs with silent footsteps, her heels making no sound, and gently closed her bedroom door, projecting an aura of utter normalcy. She neither wept nor cried out. She did not confront them. That evening they convened for dinner. Savannah offered a radiant smile, presenting him with his gift. Marcus acknowledged it with a perfunctory peck on her cheek and feigned enthusiasm. Evelyn remarked on the exceptional quality of the wine and casually suggested Savannah might benefit from a diet recommended by a friend. Laughter filled the air, encompassing everyone but Savannah. She simply observed them both with a profound serenity, a stillness that stemmed not from placidity, but from strategic contemplation. Well past midnight, Marcus lay in a deep slumber in the master suite, while Savannah, barefoot, moved through the hushed halls of the mansion. Her gaze swept across every corner. The meticulously chosen artwork, the Italian furnishings she had painstakingly imported, the magnificent grand piano she had never learned to play. Each possession served as a silent testament to a life that had never truly belonged to her. A gilded cage meticulously constructed to conform to a confining mold that had suffocated her for years. In the study, she retrieved a sheet of paper and, with an unwavering hand, penned a brief message. "Thank you for revealing your true colors." She signed it anonymously. Folding the note, she then activated her laptop. In less than an hour, she had contacted a discreet real estate agent and a foreign buyer, subsequently transferring the majority of her substantial fortune to a newly established account in Switzerland under a fabricated identity. Her years of managing her family's extensive wealth had equipped her with the precise knowledge to move capital undetected, leaving no discernible trace. By 5 o'clock that morning, the mansion was a receding memory. No staff witnessed her departure. She carried only a backpack, an elegant trench coat, her passport, and a photograph of herself at the tender age of 18, a time when her dreams were boundless and centered on global exploration, before the prestigious sterling name had transformed her into a mere decorative appendage. 2 hours later, Marcus awoke. He called out for his wife, bewildered by her absence. He scoured the kitchen, the meticulously manicured gardens, and the various bathrooms. He found her only as a solitary piece of paper resting upon the pillow. "Thank you for revealing your true colors." He crumpled the note, his comprehension utterly lacking. He harbored no inkling that she had overheard their damning conversation. He dismissed it as a capricious tantrum, a foolish whim, the nonsensical outburst of emotion. He attempted to reach her mobile phone. It was powered off. He dispatched texts, receiving no response. He then contacted his mother. "Where is Savannah?" he demanded. "Why are you inquiring of me?" Evelyn responded. "She's departed. She simply left a note. Thank you for revealing your true colors." What on earth does that signify? A palpable shiver coursed through Evelyn for the first time. On that very same day, Marcus discovered the house had been sold. The buyer had remitted the funds directly to the Swiss account, leaving him with no access to the considerable sum. Legally, every asset, including his wardrobe, now belonged to Savannah. What Marcus remained unaware of was the imminent media firestorm. The financial institution involved in the transfer had inadvertently disclosed a statement to a keen finance reporter who had been actively investigating Marcus for alleged corruption. It was merely a matter of days before the scandal would erupt across national television screens. Savannah, meanwhile, was a passenger on a city bus en route to Chicago's South Shore neighborhood, a place where her identity would be utterly unknown. She gazed out the window, her eyes serene, her lips set in a firm, unwavering line. She clutched the photograph of her 18-year-old self within the inner pocket of her coat, treating it like a protective amulet. For the first time in years, she drew breath without conscious effort. She had no concrete plan, no specific destination, only a singular objective: to commence anew from a position of perceived worthlessness, to discover for herself the true extent of her inherent value. On the evening news broadcast, the anchor declared, The wife of the ascendant political figure, Marcus Sterling, has vanished. Rumours suggest she has sold their estate and depleted her accounts. Some speculate kidnapping, while others point to a marital crisis. No one possessed definitive certainty, but Savannah did. She understood that the true abduction had been her entire existence. She knew that the disdain masquerading as marital affection would no longer find purchase in her life. And she also knew, with unwavering conviction, that the world would soon encounter a woman once dismissively labelled a lucky fat girl, but who was now resolute in demonstrating that nothing possessed greater power than a woman who no longer required external validation for her assent. No one could have found that behind that silent smile lay a truth far more profound than any betrayal. Savannah Rhodes had not merely escaped, she had fully awakened. The bus advanced with a measured pace through dusty thoroughfares, its windows veiled by the humid morning air. Her backpack rested upon her lap. Within its confines lay no ostentatious jewels, no designer apparel, no expensive perfumes, only essential documents, a modest sum of cash, a notebook filled with poignant phrases she had penned during moments when her chest felt too constricted to contain her tears. And of course, that faded photograph from her youth, capturing her standing beside the ocean, arms outstretched, as if the entirety of the world belonged to her. Back then, she had not yet encountered Marcus. Back then, she had not yet become the refined echo of a life built on artifice. The bus shuddered to a halt with a grating screech. The driver turned his head, his expression devoid of interest, and announced in a gravelly voice, "South Shore, last stop." Savannah rose. No one paid her any mind. No one recognized the woman who, mere days prior, had graced the pages of fashion publications and the spreads of charity galas. In this new world, she was invisible, and for the first time, this anonymity brought a profound sense of liberation. South Shore was not a district of poverty in the conventional sense. Rather, it was a neighborhood bearing the visible scars of hardship. Its weathered facade seemed to recount tales of harsh winters, shattered promises, and tenacious hopes that persisted like tenacious weeds pushing through fractured pavement. Children, barefoot and unconcerned, splashed in puddles of murky water. Women, cradling infants against their hips, swept the sidewalks with a determined rhythm. A lone man hawked succulent barbecue ribs from a mobile food vendor stationed on the corner. A crackling old radio emitted timeless, soulful R&B melodies. Savannah traversed the streets, absorbing every detail with a mingled sense of trepidation and fascination. A notice crudely taped to a gate caught her eye. "Room for rent, shared bath, no questions asked," she knocked. A woman in her 60s, her skin etched with the stories of time and her eyes holding a small, cautious distrust, emerged. "Looking for something?" she inquired. "I saw the sign," Savannah replied. "I need a place to stay for a while. I can pay in advance." The woman scrutinized her from head to toe. Something about her seemed incongruous, an excessive poise, skin too meticulously cared for given the surroundings. "Your name?" Savannah hesitated for but a fleeting instant. "Maya Sola." "That's an unusual name. Come in, the room is available, but I don't offer refunds and I dislike trouble." "You won't have any," Savannah assured her. The room was diminutive, furnished with a single twin bed, a fan that threatened to detach from the ceiling, with its incessant racket, and a window lacking a proper pane. The walls bore the telltale stains of dampness. It carried the scent of confinement, yet to Savannah it felt like a sanctuary. She paid for a month's lodging and began to settle in. That night she did not weep. She simply lay upon the unyielding mattress, closed her eyes, and allowed the profound silence to work its restorative magic. The following day she wandered aimlessly through the neighborhood. She introduced herself as a woman ruined by financial deception, someone who had lost everything. This narrative, while not entirely fabricated, was certainly not the complete truth as others might have imagined. They regarded her with a mixture of pity and a curious, almost morbid fascination. She was new, she was unfamiliar, she was simply another poignant tale in a community replete with them. She found herself at a modest community health centre, its facade showing signs of neglect. Inside, a few rusty examination tables, broken plastic chairs, and a makeshift reception desk, fashioned from cardboard boxes, greeted her. A woman was engaged in a tense discussion with a young man regarding medication they could not afford. "Ma'am, I have already informed you that we do not stock that particular antibiotic, and if you acquire it elsewhere, I cannot guarantee its authenticity," came a firm yet warm voice. The speaker was a tall man with dishevelled brown hair, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing the telltale dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. His gaze conveyed a deep sadness, yet his tone was resolute. Savannah observed him for a few moments. He cast a fleeting glance in her direction before refocusing on the patient. "Tell your son to continue coming in, even if you cannot afford it. We do not deny care here. We will find the medicine somehow." Once their exchange concluded, Savannah approached. "Are you the doctor?" "I am Elijah Vance. Do you require medical attention?" "No, I've come to volunteer. I have experience in organizational management. Perhaps I could assist with inventory, coordinating donations, matters of that nature." Elijah regarded her silently. There was a certain certainty in her voice, a self-assuredness that seemed at odds with her declared status of having lost everything. He did not challenge her assertion. He extended his hand. "Welcome, Maya. This place requires more willing hands than probing questions." And so her journey began. In the ensuing days, Savannah learned to meticulously fold stained linens, organize crates of expired medical supplies, and receive modest donations that arrived as if by divine intervention. No one inquired about her past. Her present contributions were all that mattered. It was within this very clinic that she encountered Lena. The child, a mere 8 years of age, possessed hair that lacked luster and eyes so large and dark they seemed to hold an ancient wisdom. She sat upon the examination table, her head resting on the shoulder of a gentle-faced elder. "Miss Della," the elder began, her voice tinged with concern. "She hasn't wanted to eat for 3 days." She elaborated, describing nighttime fevers and a noticeable pallor to the child's skin. Elijah conducted an examination, ordered tests, and then stepped into the hallway, leaning against the wall, his brow furrowed with worry. "What is it?" Savannah inquired. "I suspect leukemia, but we need the laboratory results, and that requires funds." Savannah peered through the window. Lena, her small hands occupied with a doll missing an arm, murmured softly to it as if confiding secrets. Miss Della approached Savannah when Elijah had departed. "You are not from around here," she observed. "Forgive me, but your hands are clean, your nails are neatly trimmed, and your posture is upright. Life in this place tends to make us stoop." Savannah offered no immediate reply. "Do not worry," Miss Della continued, her voice kind. "I had my secrets when I was young too. I'm not judging you. I simply mean that when a woman conceals something, she must choose with utmost care those she permits to observe her, for some eyes seek only the superficial, while others discern the soul. Elijah is of the latter kind." Savannah nodded, a lump forming in her throat. 2 weeks elapsed. Savannah became an integral part of the clinic, not for any specialized knowledge, but for the invaluable contributions she offered. Her time, her attentive listening, her unwavering commitment. She took charge of cleaning duties, provided assistance, and handled the transportation of supplies. By night, she meticulously documented her experiences in her notebook, a single sentence recurring with unwavering persistence. I never had time for the poor until I became one of them. One morning, while organizing documents in the small office, the telephone rang. Elijah answered with his customary professional tone, but his countenance shifted dramatically upon hearing the name. Sterling, are you certain, and the file still exists? Savannah nearby dropped a box. Elijah glanced at her, his expression unreadable, but he registered her sudden tremor. Are you all right? He asked. Yes, I just felt a little dizzy. Elijah returned to his conversation, concluding it with a brief, silent nod. He offered no explanation. He simply stepped outside to the rear patio for a cigarette. Savannah felt her heart pounding with an intensity that suggested it might escape her chest. Sterling, that name was a violent echo in her memory, the residual resonance of everything she desperately sought to bury. Later, she observed him seated alone. She approached him. May I inquire what that call was about? Elijah hesitated. It concerns a former patient, a case I believed was resolved. They mentioned a name, one I haven't heard in years. Sterling. A profound chill enveloped Savannah. Do you know him? She responded with a falsehood, a skill honed by years of survival. Elijah did not press the issue, but his gaze upon her was that of someone beginning to piece together an intricate puzzle. Savannah endured a sleepless night. She sat upon her mattress, the open backpack beside her, the photograph clutched in her hand, and the notebook filled with phrases that grew heavier with each passing moment. She was no longer Savannah. Maya Sola too was beginning to fracture. In this intricate game of assumed identities, deceit, and concealed truths, she remained uncertain how much longer she could sustain the newly constructed life. She was only just beginning to forge. Some wounds leave indelible scars, while others rob you of your very breath. The Sterling name, she realized, belonged to the latter category. The paramount question was no longer if Marcus would find her, but rather, when he did, would she possess the fortitude to confront him, or would she revert to the invisible confinement from which she had so arduously struggled to break free? Savannah observed her reflection in the cracked mirror of the shared bathroom as she washed her face. The water was murky and frigid, and the grimy tiles mirrored an image of herself that she did not yet fully recognize. Maya Sola. That name had become a form of protective armor, a guise she wore with increasing ease, though a hidden part of her still quivered internally. Weeks drifted by with a slow, steady rhythm, yet a subtle transformation began to take root within her. The humble routines, the genuine human connections, the complete absence of pretense, all these elements began to shape her heart, much like the transformative power of fire on metal. She no longer dwelled incessantly on Marcus. The hateful phrase was no longer replayed like a dagger lodged in her consciousness. Her thoughts now gravitated towards other matters. Lena's infectious laughter, the weary lines etched around Elijah's eyes, Miss Della's perceptive gaze, and a burgeoning idea that took firm hold to construct something new from the ashes, not solely for herself, but for other women who, like her, had been subjected to manipulation, silenced, and exploited. Lena had become the focal point of her existence, the child clinging to her with an absolute, unwavering trust, as if she had been anticipating Savannah's arrival her entire life. They engaged in imaginative play with tattered dolls, conjured absurd narratives, and shared profound silences that conveyed more than 1,000 spoken words. Savannah did not require a biological connection to feel the depth of this bond. Deep within her soul, she recognized this as the genuine love that life had, on 3 separate occasions, withheld from her. Have you felt invisible too? Lena inquired one morning as they sat on the floor, sketching with colored chalk. Yes, many times, Savannah replied without excessive deliberation. Then we are the same, the child declared, because when people are frightened, they avert their gaze and then you cease to exist. Savannah felt a profound ache in her throat. She pondered how many times she herself had turned away. Cocooned within her sphere of opulence and superficiality, how often she had feigned ignorance of suffering from the secure confines of her armoured vehicle. That guilt, a silent, constant companion, weighed heavily upon her. One sweltering afternoon, the neighbourhood resonated with the joyous sounds of music. A community fair had been organised as a fundraising initiative, an idea Elijah proposed as a means of collective distraction. However, it was Savannah who truly took the reins. She inspired the neighbourhood women to contribute homemade sweets, artisanal crafts, and knitted garments. She meticulously orchestrated the event's layout, scheduling, and necessary permits. In a mere matter of days, she had organically emerged as a central, indispensable figure. "I do not know who you were before, Maya," Miss Della remarked, while they kneaded dough together, "but who you are now is a blessing to this community." Savannah offered a gentle smile. She had long since ceased correcting those who addressed her by her adopted name. It had transcended mere disguise. It represented a version of herself she earnestly aspired to embody authentically. Amidst this nascent period of personal renewal, an unexpected memory resurfaced. Elijah was conversing with a nurse regarding an old patient file. They mentioned something that sent a jolt through Savannah. "Evelyn Sterling," Elijah commented, oblivious to Savannah's presence behind a nearby curtain. "She was a private patient of mine. I was dismissed years ago when I refused to condone the illegal prescriptions being administered to addicted individuals. Her son, that politician Marcus, threatened to ruin my career if I spoke out." Savannah felt a sharp pang. Her personal narrative and Elijah's had been intricately entwined long before their paths had crossed. The same surname, the same pervasive corruption. The intricate web of their lives was converging, seemingly unbeknownst to them, or perhaps fate was proving to be far more cruel than she had ever imagined. That night, as the fair drew to a close, Savannah ascended to the rooftop of her residential building. She gazed at the expanse of the star-strewn sky and for the first time since her flight, allowed tears to flow freely. These were not tears of mere sadness, but a poignant, bitter-sweet confluence of gratitude and sorrow. She was alive. She was liberated. Yet residual shadows from her past lingered, impossible to entirely erase. Miles away, Marcus Sterling hurled his glass of scotch against the wall of his office. The crystal shattered explosively, yet no one present dared to even glance upwards. His political campaign was teetering on the brink of collapse. Key donors were withdrawing their support. The media was increasingly suspicious, with reporters hot on the trail of the peculiar sale of the mansion. Savannah's disappearance had escalated into a full-blown public scandal. "Find her," he commanded the private investigator he had engaged. "I don't care how, I need her back before this completely ruins me." The investigator, a grizzled ex-military man with the world-weary demeanor of a tired hound, nodded with a practiced impassivity. He already possessed several promising leads: financial transactions, network connections, grainy surveillance footage. It was merely a matter of time before he closed in. Meanwhile, Savannah visited an old, disused warehouse situated on the periphery of the neighborhood. No one observed her. No one suspected that she had secretly acquired the property, utilizing yet another assumed identity. Her plan was meticulously clear: to transform the derelict structure into a foundation dedicated to supporting women who had been subjected to abuse. It would be a true sanctuary, equipped with professional counselors, provisions for food, secure housing, and essential legal assistance. a haven where individuals similar to herself could embark on a new chapter without the necessity of falsifying their identities. She meticulously documented every aspect of this ambitious endeavour in a thick-bound notebook: resource requirements, potential suppliers, and strategies for securing funding. Elijah lent his support without probing excessive questions. His gaze no longer held suspicion, but rather a burgeoning admiration, though a discernible melancholy still resided within his eyes. "I lost my wife to misdiagnosed pneumonia," he confessed to her one evening. "Private care ultimately failed her. Expensive hospitals make errors too, you see. They simply possess a greater proficiency in concealing them." Savannah listened intently, offering no words. She understood that, in a profound sense, he too had been wounded by a fundamentally corrupt system. At the fair, Lena was diligently crafting and selling handmade string bracelets. Her laughter was more radiant than any beacon. She weaved through the crowded stalls with an infectious spirit. Miss Della observed her, her gaze weary yet filled with a profound joy. Everything appeared to be moving seamlessly until the unforeseen occurred. Lena suddenly faltered. Her body gave a brief shudder before becoming utterly still. A crimson flow began to trickle from her nose. An immediate hush fell over the scene. Elijah rushed to her side, gently cradling her in his arms, and called out, "Give me orders." Savannah followed, her legs feeling strangely distant. At the medical facility, they administered an IV drip, collected biological samples, and provided respiratory support. The pronouncement landed with the impact of a chilling downpour. "The leukemia has advanced," Elijah stated, his voice catching, "and our resources here are insufficient for her care." Savannah instinctively tightened her fists. There was absolutely no possibility she would remain passive. Not now. Not for this young girl who had restored her own spirit. That evening, as Lena slept under the influence of a fever, Savannah retrieved her satchel and assessed her final resources. A single piece of ornamentation, concealed with extreme diligence, was the sole item she hadn't divested or abandoned. It was her grandmother's ring, adorned with a sapphire of considerable value, surpassing the worth of the entire district. She clutched it tightly and ventured into the city. The following dawn she returned, bearing a sealed packet and a financial instrument adequate to initiate the treatment regimen. No one inquired about its origin. No one possessed the right to do so. However, Elijah regarded her with a new perspective. His gaze was no longer tinged with skepticism. It conveyed an unshakable conviction. "You did not arrive here seeking refuge," he informed her. "Your purpose was to reconstruct yourself. And you know what? You are succeeding, even if your every breath is sustained by deception." Savannah lowered her gaze, a rare occurrence. She yearned to confess everything, to reveal her true identity, her history, every detail. Yet she refrained. Not yet. From her makeshift bed, Lena offered Savannah a weak smile, her lips parched. "Please don't depart," she whispered. "Never," Savannah vowed, taking her hand. The relentless march of time continued. Marcus persisted in his pursuit, but Savannah was no longer the individual who passively accepted his disdain. She had evolved into a fighter, even as apprehension lurked behind every smile. For untruths, when perpetuated for too long, begin to acquire a life of their own, and hers were now undeniably animated. The pertinent question was how much longer she could maintain their subjugation, for a falsehood that learns to breathe can also learn to inflict fatal damage. Savannah stirred before the first rays of dawn, a routine she had established almost daily since adopting the pseudonym Maya Solar. The fan emitted a persistent drone, and the moisture-laden walls of her temporary dwelling appeared more desolate than ever. She squeezed her eyelids shut for a fleeting moment before fully opening them. She sought a brief respite from the crushing weight of her reality, a burden akin to a gravestone upon her heart. Lena remained under medical care, reliant on treatments that offered only limited control over the escalating progression of her leukemia. Each passing minute was a fierce contest. Each of the girl's smiles served as a bulwark against the encroaching despair. And despite having secured the initial financial outlay through the sale of that carefully guarded trinket, she understood it would prove insufficient. The therapeutic course promised to be protracted, arduous, and financially draining, demanding not merely monetary resources but a significant toll on her very essence. Within the medical facility, Elijah observed her with heightened scrutiny. Her gestures, her silences, her meticulous avoidance of any self-disclosure. His feelings toward her now transcended mere admiration. There was an unsettling undercurrent, an intuitive sense, as though he were traversing a familiar landscape, albeit with its labels erased. He began to suspect that the narrative she presented was a truncated, carefully curated, and significantly understated version of events. An inner conviction suggested a deeper, far more extensive truth lay concealed beneath that somber composure. That morning, while meticulously reviewing the pharmaceutical supplies in the modest, ad hoc dispensary, Elijah casually posed a question, one not born of mere curiosity. "Maya," he inquired, "have you ever resided abroad? You possess a certain refined accent, neutral and educated. It's not particularly common around here." She paused, her throat constricting, and her mind raced. "I pursued my studies in Europe for a few years, followed by a period of employment in Washington, D.C. That's likely the reason for my occasional unusual intonation." Elijah inclined his head, offering no further comment, yet the skepticism in his eyes deepened. Hours later, Savannah visited the derelict warehouse, the site where her initial plans for establishing a charitable organization had commenced. She settled onto a broken crate amidst the dust and retrieved her notebook. Her pen traced a single profound statement. "Veer is a cage with open doors." She closed the notebook and drew a deep, fortifying breath. It was then she detected the sound of approaching footsteps. Turning, she found Miss Della standing there, a bag of bread in one hand and a resolute expression on her face. "I looked for you at the clinic. Lena was asking after you," she stated directly. Savannah rose, brushing the dust from her garments. "I merely came to jot down a few thoughts. I must get this place operational before everything unravels." The elder woman placed the bread on a nearby box. "You are not evading a financial scam or impending ruin. I recognized that from our very first encounter, not by your words, but by your deliberate omissions. One does not flee from affection, my dear. You only flee from apprehension. And you, whom do you dread?" The question hung in the air, dense and pervasive. Savannah wished to respond, but her capacity to articulate the myriad emotions within her was insufficient. She managed only a choked whisper. "Myself." The elder woman nodded, comprehending without further explanation. She left the bag of sustenance, gently placed a hand on Savannah's shoulder, and departed without a farewell. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, Marcus Sterling stared intently at his computer screen, his fury carefully contained. Displayed before him was a photograph, captured by a volunteer at a charitable bazaar in South Shore. The image depicted a gathering of women around a food stall. Tucked away in a corner, slightly blurred but unmistakably present, was her, Savannah. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping backward, and bellowed an instruction into the emptiness. "Prepare the vehicle. We are heading to South Shore." 3 hours later, his black SUV, its windows darkened, glided through the unpaved avenues of the neighborhood, a stark contrast to its surroundings. The local populace regarded him with suspicion. Some moved aside, while others feigned ignorance of his presence. Savannah was returning from an errand to procure gauze for the clinic. She was walking with purposeful haste when she noticed the vehicle parked directly in front of the medical center's entrance. She froze mid-stride, a sickening sensation welled in her stomach. Her chest felt constricted. She would have recognized that vehicle from any vantage point, even without its illumination. She didn't pause to deliberate or analyze. Instinctively, she pivoted and began walking in the opposite direction. Her pace not that of a desperate sprint, but deliberately calibrated to avoid the appearance of flight. She darted into one narrow passage, then another, ascended a slight embankment, and concealed herself behind a crumbling wall until the vehicle departed and vanished from her sight. He had not spotted her. Marcus had not located her, but he was perilously close. Too close. Sleep eluded her that night. Fear had returned, an unwelcome affliction from the past. She pondered how much longer this precarious equilibrium could be maintained before the entire structure collapsed. At the clinic, Lena awaited her with wide, expectant eyes. She held out a bracelet fashioned from crimson threads. "This is so you won't leave," the girl explained. "Now you're bound to me." Savannah knelt beside the bed, gently stroking Lena's forehead. "I am bound to you even without this adornment." "Are you distressed?" Lena inquired. "A little. Why? You've saved my life." Savannah fought back tears. "Because I don't know how to rescue myself." Elijah, an unseen observer from the doorway, felt a profound shift within him. He could no longer endure the pervasive uncertainty. This woman was unlike any other he had encountered. Her past bore scars that did not align with the fabricated narrative she presented. That morning, in the hushed hours when all were asleep, Elijah entered the clinic's compact office and activated his laptop. He wasn't certain of his objective until it materialized. He typed the name that had been a persistent presence since his initial encounter with Maya Solar, Savannah Rhodes. The search engine returned a multitude of results. Images from social gatherings, magazine covers, reports of her disappearance, articles detailing the clandestine sale of a magnificent estate, political controversies, and one particular photograph that brought him to a standstill. The identical smile, the same expressive eyes, the very visage he had come to decipher over the preceding months. Maya Solar was an illusion, a carefully constructed facade, yet every action she had undertaken was undeniably real. The aid rendered, the kindness shown, the unwavering dedication. This woman, whose history was littered with fragments of shattered lives, had revitalized others. She had, in essence, resurrected herself, and now he knew her true identity. Savannah Rhodes, the vanished spouse of the man who had subjected him to public humiliation and professional ruin. The intricate web was drawing tighter. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. He could no longer feign ignorance. And now he faced the crucial decision of how to proceed with this newfound knowledge. For the price of awareness is the capacity to turn away, and he vowed he would not do that again. Elijah awoke, having experienced no sleep whatsoever. The image of Savannah Rhodes on his screen was seared into his consciousness like a burn. Maya Solar did not exist. He had witnessed her adeptness at mending the afflictions of others while silently bearing her own immeasurable burdens. He understood that confronting her would irrevocably alter their present circumstances. However, remaining silent was tantamount to betraying the very principles he held most dear: truth. He found her seated on the clinic's threshold, her notebook clutched in her hands. She was not writing, merely holding it as if it were her sole anchor. "We need to converse," he stated without preamble. She raised her eyes, her gaze held no hint of surprise. She had implicitly known that he possessed the truth. Yes, she confirmed, slowly closing the notebook. It is time. They proceeded to the warehouse, that cavernous space gradually imbued with profound significance. Elijah regarded her with a restrained demeanor, akin to someone poised to cast a stone into tranquil water, fully aware of the ensuing ripples. Why the deception? Savannah leaned against the wall, her voice subdued yet resolute. Because if I had spoken the truth, they would have relentlessly pursued me. He would have found me, they would have exploited me once more, and I no longer possessed the fortitude to be merely an ornamental object displayed within a glass enclosure. Savannah Rhodes, Elijah added, the name seeming to cause him discomfort. Wife of Marcus Sterling, heir to one of the nation's most substantial fortunes, vanished, declared a national enigma, and left broken. They omitted that detail from the headlines. Elijah lowered his head. She approached him, meeting his gaze directly. I did not fabricate my story to engage in games. My intentions were not to manipulate anyone. I merely sought an existence free from pain. And did you find it? Savannah offered a melancholic smile. Occasionally, when Lena expresses her joy, when you converse with me without expectation, when I tend to wounds away from any public gaze. He listened intently, but a deeper understanding lay beyond mere words, beyond any sense of judgment. You are not a coward, he finally declared. Your departure required immense courage, but now you must summon the bravery to return. To what? He asked. To assert your name aloud, to confront them, to reclaim what is rightfully yours. For if you do not, they will seize it, and they will pilfer it all once more, precisely as they have consistently done. She gazed at him for a considerable duration, and within her chest something fractured. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the media landscape exploded with sensational headlines. An anonymous tip purportedly leaked from the prosecutor's office unveiled incriminating documents, audio recordings, and financial transactions linking Marcus Sterling and his mother, Evelyn, to a complex web of money laundering, misappropriation of public funds, and judicial bribery. Marcus unleashed his fury upon his legal counsel over the telephone. Evelyn remained confined to her chambers, not out of shame, but from palpable fear. That morning, an unmarked envelope had appeared at her doorstep. Within lay a meticulously copied, altered birth certificate and a concise note. Truth cannot be eradicated. Evelyn required no further elucidation. The past she had meticulously interred beneath layers of silence was now resurfacing to demand retribution. In a desperate act, she performed a deed she had not undertaken in years. She placed a call to Elijah. He received the summons at the clinic. Her voice, when it reached him, was almost unrecognizable. Elijah, I must speak with you. Only you. Elijah hesitated, but ultimately agreed. Their meeting took place at a discreet hotel, far removed from the prying eyes of the media. Evelyn appeared visibly aged, her demeanor reflecting the strain of mere weeks. She wore no adornments, no makeup, only dark circles beneath her eyes, a tremor in her hands, and an unmistakable apprehension betraying her. I am not here to offer justifications, she stated, her gaze averted. I am acutely aware of my transgressions, but you must comprehend a crucial detail. Marcus is not my biological son. Elijah blinked in surprise. What are you suggesting? My husband and I were unable to conceive. I endured an assault when I was 18 years old. I concealed the incident. I perpetuated the charade of being his legitimate mother. I raised that child, striving to suppress any recollection of his genesis. Elijah felt the atmosphere grow heavy with unspoken implications. And you never disclosed this to him? Never, until this present moment, for he is increasingly mirroring that man, and I cannot permit it. A profound silence ensued. Evelyn then produced a small casket. Within it lay photographs, official documents, and a sealed correspondence. Lena, that young girl, what was her mother's name? She perished during childbirth. Her name is not registered in any official records. Examine these closely. That child could potentially be his granddaughter. There are remarkable coincidences. I cannot claim absolute certainty, but there are discernible dates, specific details. The son of the man who assaulted her may now have a daughter, and that daughter was in their company. Elijah departed from that location as if bearing an immense burden. He struggled to connect the disparate fragments of information, yet an inner certainty told him the truth was far closer than he had initially imagined. That night, Savannah awaited him at the warehouse. She had occupied herself with cleaning, organizing, and engaging in activities to divert her thoughts. However, upon witnessing his expression, she recognized he carried tidings beyond mere unpleasantness. "What has transpired?" she inquired. He recounted every detail concerning Evelyn, Marcus, and the potential familial connection to Lena. Savannah remained silent for a moment, then moved towards the window, speaking without turning to face him. "I too have something to confide." Elijah swallowed. "That I am unwell. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. I received the diagnosis a year ago. That is also why I departed. I did not wish to perish surrounded by those who would merely lament the loss of my inheritance." Elijah was rendered speechless. "I have a limited time remaining, perhaps mere months if fortune favors me, but I desire for that period to hold profound meaning." "It will," he affirmed, his eyes glistening. "We shall construct that foundation. We will establish a lasting legacy, even in your absence." She embraced him, her fear conspicuously absent, as if his touch could anchor her physical form to this earth that was soon destined to fail her. Upon returning to her quarters, Savannah discovered an envelope addressed to her in elegant cursive script. She opened it. It was a letter. She recognized the handwriting before perusing its contents. It emanated from her mother. "Savannah, if you are currently reading this, it signifies my passing. I cannot ascertain the full extent of the damage I inflicted upon you. I am only aware that for many years I harbored resentment towards you, for you embodied all that I could never attain. Because your father cherished you more than me, because you possessed an effortless radiance while I was merely a woman of muted tones, confined within the cold grandeur of a mansion. Forgive my harshness for failing to shield you, for not conveying that you merited far more than a husband who sought you solely for your lineage. I recognize this from our initial encounter, yet I remained silent, as was my habit. This correspondence is not an attempt at exculpation. It is a confession and a fervent plea. Do not permit my bitterness to reside within you. Embrace your freedom. Cultivate your strength. And when your resilience falters, do not conceal it. Allow yourself to receive solace, affection, and support. For even if you do not articulate it, you too are deserving of salvation." Savannah succumbed to a torrent of sobs that convulsed her very soul, the kind that liberate years of unseen chains. The foundation remained incomplete. Marcus continued his relentless search. The diagnosis still resided within her body. Yet that night, for the very first time, she slept without the oppressive weight of fear. For truth, though agonizing, possesses the power to liberate, and she no longer had space to harbor falsehoods. Her sole focus now was to build something meaningful before her physical form gave out, and she would achieve this alongside Elijah, with Lena, her own truth serving as her sole inheritance. The renovation of the disused warehouse concluded a fortnight ahead of schedule. The collective efforts of the neighborhood's inhabitants came together as if the project had always been intrinsically theirs. Men whose literacy was rudimentary mixed cement with the precision of a seasoned surgeon. women who had carried the burden of years of sorrow, scrubbed walls as if cleansing ancient wounds. Every brick, every tile seemed to hold within it a multitude of narratives, stories that, until that juncture, no one had been willing to acknowledge. The Maya Solar Foundation officially opened its doors in a ceremony devoid of media presence, without flashing cameras, and free from platitudinous pronouncements. Only those who held genuine significance were in attendance. Lena, her hair noticeably thinned by chemotherapy, was the one to wield the scissors for the ribbon cutting. Elijah, his eyes brimming with emotion, held Savannah's hand as she drew a deep, deliberate breath, each inhalation a defiant act against the encroaching spectre of mortality. Savannah had finalized all the requisite legal documentation weeks prior. Her entire remaining fortune, including accounts, investments, and shares, had been irrevocably transferred to the Foundation's custodianship. Not a single jewel, not one property, remained under her personal dominion. All that had once symbolized her subjugation was now poised to become an instrument of deliverance. Savannah moved with measured steps through the corridors of the newly constructed edifice, its pristine white walls, the vibrant murals painstakingly rendered by the neighborhood's children, the vacant examination rooms anticipating the arrival of patients. The entire experience stirred her profoundly. This place was more than mere architecture. It represented her lasting imprint, her personal atonement. Days later, concealed within the shadowed recess of a hallway, Evelyn materialized. Her arrival had gone unnoticed by all. She was dressed with unpretentious simplicity, her face devoid of makeup or jewelry. Her eyes appeared swollen, and her posture was stooped, as if she had borne the crushing weight of guilt for years, a burden that had finally become too immense to carry. Lena was asleep when Evelyn entered her room. She settled beside the bed and, with a touch of awkwardness, gently stroked the girl's hand. She murmured words that seemed directed more towards herself than the slumbering child. She then departed as silently as she had arrived, yet Savannah was waiting for her outside. "I anticipated your arrival," Savannah stated. Evelyn lowered her gaze. "I have not come to seek validation. I wish to implore your forgiveness, not on Marcus's behalf. He has already charted his own course. I seek absolution for myself, for my complicity, for my prolonged silence." Savannah remained silent for several prolonged seconds. "And you expect me to grant it?" "No, merely to hear me out." Evelyn then continued, "I observed your gradual diminishment over many years. You transformed into something so flawlessly composed that it became impossible to truly see you. You were, Savannah, invisible, just as I have been for my entire existence. I was exploited, manipulated, and coerced into silence as well, and you served as my mirror. That is precisely why I resented you, because you served as a constant reminder of all that I lacked the courage to pursue." Savannah moved closer, not to embrace her, but simply to meet her gaze directly. "I hear you, but I do not forgive you for what you inflicted upon me. I forgive you for what you permitted yourself to endure." Evelyn finally yielded to the tears she had held captive for decades. On the television screen, Marcus was featured prominently in the news, no longer as a political figure, but as a suspect. His image was interspersed with headlines detailing corruption, financial malfeasance, and alleged ties to influence peddling networks. He had been unceremoniously expelled from his political party. His countenance, once capable of projecting manufactured smiles, now served only to broadcast scandal, and then, as a final desperate measure, he appeared at the site of the Foundation. Savannah observed him from the second-floor vantage point. She experienced neither apprehension nor indignation. Instead, she felt a chilling detachment, akin to an observer witnessing the plight of someone already irretrievably lost. He awaited her in the courtyard, a briefcase in hand. He appeared significantly older than the intervening years would suggest. "I have not come to engage in conflict," he stated as soon as he perceived her. "I have come to propose a compromise." "There are no compromises to be made with you," she replied with unwavering calm. "I possess irrefutable evidence, documented proof. I could easily disseminate a public falsehood. I could accuse you of theft, of orchestrating your disappearance to abscond with everything. I have already accomplished that. I have reclaimed everything, not the material possessions, but rather the dignity you forfeited years ago." She stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "Do you genuinely believe this facility holds less value than all that you once possessed?" "No," Savannah countered. "I believe this facility is the sole entity of true worth, for you may retain all your material acquisitions. What you will never attain is inner peace." Marcus took an involuntary step backward. The unvarnished truth struck him with greater force than any threat. "And inform your mother that I have heard her, and the girl has no need to ascertain the identity of her grandfather. She is already abundantly supplied with love. She requires none of yours." Before he could formulate a response, Savannah reached into her handbag and presented him with an envelope. Should this be the final communication from me, Marcus departed without unveiling it. Later, within the solitude of his apartment, he finally read its contents. "Influence devoid of affection is empty. Wealth without spirit is annihilation. You extinguished my spirit countless times while I lived, yet I found renewal, while you remain entombed by your own conceit. We are no longer adversaries. We are non-existent. Cultivate solitude. Perhaps then you might embark on discovering your true self." Elijah and Savannah shared a night together. It was not a night defined by physical intimacy. Instead, it was a night illuminated by profound honesty. They occupied the same bed, attuned to the rhythm of each other's breath, akin to two survivors adrift in the vast ocean, clinging to one another for solace. "Are you apprehensive?" he inquired. "I possess tranquility, a state distinct from the absence of fear, yet sufficient. I hold you dear." Her response transcended spoken language. She gently clasped his hand, guiding it to rest upon her chest. The following dawn, Elijah ventured out to procure coffee. Upon his return, he discovered her in slumber, a serene smile gracing her lips, but her breath had ceased. He approached, his touch confirming the irreversible truth. She was gone. An immediate outcry or torrent of tears did not erupt. He simply sat beside her, holding her hand until the full radiance of the sun ascended. Scattered on the surface of a nearby table were envelopes, each bearing a name inscribed by hand. One was addressed to Elijah, another to Lena, one to Miss Della, and the last to Evelyn. Elijah's missive conveyed this message: "Refrain from lamenting what was absent. Cultivate gratitude for what existed. The life I envisioned for myself, I entrust to your care. Never permit anyone to cast doubt upon your inner radiance, for it was you who illuminated my path even in the deepest darkness." Lena's note read, "You demonstrated to me that a simple smile can mend more effectively than any remedy. Vow to me that you will chronicle your own narrative, as the world yearns to learn of a young spirit who conquered apprehension." The Maya Solar Foundation persevered. It flourished. It offered solace. It extended its embrace, and upon one of its prominent walls, a mural depicting Savannah's radiant smile served as a perpetual reminder that some souls, though they may depart this earthly realm, never truly cease to exist. For it is not material possessions that reshape the world, but the unvarnished truth and the profound love that germinates from it. Elijah had no precise recollection of the duration he remained by her side. Perhaps an hour, perhaps two. Time itself seemed to halt within that humble chamber where she, with her body at rest and her smile still evident, had chosen to depart without ostentatious farewells, without clamour, without trepidation. Her departure mirrored the manner in which she had navigated her final months, in quietude, yet leaving behind an enduring imprint. There was no sombre procession to a marble mausoleum, no solemn mass beneath opulent chandeliers, no hollow pronouncements from figures of authority. Her body was incinerated as per her wishes, and her ashes were dispersed across the verdant grounds of the Maya Solar Foundation, precisely where a nascent almond sapling had been planted. A tree Lena vowed to tend each morning. The tidings of her passing disseminated rapidly throughout the community. Women shed tears at the threshold. Children grew subdued, and Lena entered a period of days without uttering a single word. Elijah moved as if on autopilot, yet he pressed onward. Responsibilities demanded continuation. He made a solemn vow to himself that he would not permit her chronicle to be interred within that sterile room. It was Lena who subsequently unearthed a significant revelation. Weeks later, secreted within one of Savannah's desk compartments, she discovered a meticulously bound manuscript. Penned in the same clear, decisive script she recognized from clinic notes. The title, inscribed by hand, declared, "My husband told me I was repulsive." The introductory passage commenced thus: "This is not the chronicle of a woman forsaken, but of one who learned to relinquish her own essence in an effort to appease the world, only to awaken one fateful day." Elijah absorbed its entirety in a single night. Upon reaching its conclusion, he understood the imperative course of action. Months thereafter, the book was brought to light by an independent publishing house. None could have anticipated the profound impact it would achieve. It achieved widespread renown, initially through digital channels, subsequently dominating traditional media. Women procured it in hushed tones, shared it with eyes brimming with emotion, discussed it in hushed conversations at neighborhood gatherings, and dissected its themes in academic forums. Savannah's narrative transcended the confines of a tale about a spurned wife. It resonated with every woman who had ever felt inadequate. In interviews, Elijah spoke solely about the Foundation's ongoing initiatives. He never sought personal acclaim for the book. All revenue generated was channeled towards establishing additional Maya Solar Foundation centers in diverse regions. The overarching objective was unequivocal: no woman should be compelled to vanish in order to reclaim her life. It was Lena who bestowed a name upon the second establishment. She christened it the Sanctuary of the Reborn. It was humble, modest, yet brimming with vitality. She herself adorned a wall with the very phrase Savannah had imparted in her letter: "Vow to me that you will chronicle your own narrative." And so she did. Lena began to write. She published a children's book inspired by her personal journey, featuring a young girl who vanquished the spectre of bleak days with the potency of a smile and a vibrant red bracelet. She received invitations to literary festivals. She participated in interviews. Invariably, she spoke of Savannah as if she was still present, and in Lena's heart she was. Elijah continued his role as the Foundation's Director of Medical Services. There were moments when the burden of her absence descended upon him with crushing weight. However, a simple sojourn into the garden, witnessing the women's laughter, the children's energetic play, and the arrival of enthusiastic volunteers was sufficient to affirm Savannah's triumph, that her love had not extinguished, that her legacy was not mere dust, but a deeply rooted essence. He wore a locket around his neck. Within it rested a lock of hair she had gifted him prior to her passing, accompanied by a note: "When you harbor doubts about yourself, touch this. Here resides the fragment of me that will never depart." He refrained from opening it in public, reserving the act for solitary nights when the profound silence became almost unbearable. Evelyn too underwent a transformation. Initially, few believed it, not even herself. Yet it was true. She commenced visits to shelters for vulnerable women. She became an unseen volunteer at a refuge for victims of abuse. And in a manner wholly unexpected, she bequeathed all her holdings, investments, and financial accounts to the Maya Solar Foundation. She vanished from public view. No further word of her ever surfaced. Speculation abounded. Some suggested she entered a religious order, others that she relocated to a foreign land. The reality was that her name ceased to be synonymous with influence and instead became a discreet shadow, no longer seeking to exert dominion over any domain. Marcus, for his part, experienced a precipitous decline. He forfeited his wealth, his standing, and his associates. He attempted to publish a personal account to redeem his reputation, but it found no readership. He gradually receded into obscurity, a fate that befalls men who construct their empires solely upon falsehoods. On one occasion, Elijah observed him in a city cafe, solitary, disheveled, his gaze unfocused. Elijah did not approach him. He offered no words. He merely contemplated Savannah's inscription in that final letter. We are no longer adversaries. We are nothing. Precisely 1 year following her demise, the Foundation convened a special observance in her honor. Attendees journeyed from various locales, women who had absorbed her book, who had escaped abusive domestic situations, who had been liberated from human trafficking, who had found healing in quietude thanks to her chronicle. They spoke with unreserved clarity, devoid of shame, untouched by fear. At the culmination of the proceedings, a woman ascended to the podium and declared, "I was unseen until I encountered her narrative. Savannah did not perish. She awakened within me and within countless others." Elijah closed his eyes and a gentle smile touched his lips. As they departed, Lena clasped his hand. "Do you believe she observes us from above?" "I have no doubt. She resides within you, within me, within all of us. I dream of her sometimes. What guidance does she offer to persist in writing?" That words possess the capacity to heal as well, and Lena continued to write.